If you've ever sat down with someone who's struggling with memory and thought, I just don't know what to talk to them about. Maybe it's an aging parent or grandparent, maybe a resident in a home that you work at, or someone who's struggling with memory issues like traumatic brain injury. I want to show you something that we created specifically for moments like that. They're called Neuro Stream Memory Cues, and you can find them at memorycues.com. But before you go there, let me show you what they are, how they work, and where the idea actually came from. When someone's memory begins to change, conversations can become harder. And sometimes without realizing it, we start asking questions like, do you remember this? Or do you remember when that happened? Pretty soon, conversation can start feeling more like a game of 20 questions or a memory test than actually spending time with someone that you care about. Memory Cues takes a different approach. And the idea actually came from something I experienced years ago. At the time, I was working at a geriatric psych hospital and leading groups with our elderly patients. And I wanted to give them something different from the typical group experience. So one day I came to work wearing a Hawaiian shirt and a straw hat and told everybody, today we're going to the beach. And they got excited. Of course, we didn't actually leave the hospital, but when we got into the therapy room, I played Beach Boys music and we passed around a blown up beach ball and everybody took turns talking about experiences that they'd had at a beach or an ocean during their life. And they loved it. What really stuck out to me was how naturally the stories started coming. So I thought, what else could I do? I had a box of antique items up in my attic that I'd saved for my grandmother. And I started taking some of those into the hospital and doing a kind of show and tell. And they'd recognize something, they'd make a comment about it, or they'd start telling a story. And I began thinking about photographing those old objects and turning them into these flashcards, but I realized it wasn't the items themselves. It was the shared experiences that these people had around the items that I wanted to get to. So the idea evolved. Instead of focusing on particular products, why not focus on familiar experiences and subjects that many of us have encountered throughout our lives? And eventually that idea became NeuroStream Memory Cues. Here's how they work. Let me show you one. This is actually a picture of a lady reading a map. And the photograph takes up almost the entire front of this large 8.5 by 11-inch card. So it's easy to use. And let me show you just how big it is. This is a normal notepad, and you can see this is the size of the notepad. So this is easily seen in a group setting. When you've got multiple people in a room, you can pass this around or you can just hold it up, and most of them can see what's going on in the picture. And I don't have to hold this up and ask, do you remember this? Instead, I can simply say something like, what do you notice about this picture? Or maybe, have you ever experienced anything like this? And then I listen. The photograph isn't a test, it's a place to begin conversation. So aside from this full large photograph on the front, here's what's on the back. We've included a smaller version of the picture up here. So if you're using this in a group setting, I don't continually have to pull it back and look at it myself. I can look at the picture and say, okay, what's going on in this picture? This woman's sitting at a table and she's looking at something. What is that? So you get the smaller picture there and you get a list of questions or prompts that you can ask people regarding the picture. So here we've got questions like, have you ever been lost? When? Where? Describe some things you might see on a map. Who was the map reader in your family when you would take trips? Have you ever used a handheld compass? What do you think about today's navigation systems? So you've got a lot of different questions there that can prompt discussion. We've included a storytelling prompt up here under the picture. This one is make up a story about what you see in this picture. So they could tell you a short story about what this woman's doing. Maybe she's trying to get home for the holidays or she's looking for a hidden treasure. But that's one thing that they can do is make up a story using the story prompt. And then down at the bottom here, we've included a couple of interesting facts related to what's going on in the picture. So this one says, maps are usually made with north at the top. This wasn't always the case. In medieval Europe, map makers placed east at the top. And the second one, cartography is the science of map making. So we include a couple little facts there that if you're doing a group, you can use those as further discussion starters. So while The people that you're working with are looking at this big picture. You've got everything you need on your side to help keep the conversation going. And there's very little preparation needed. You don't have to create an activity or struggle to think of the next question. While I was working at the psych hospital, once I had these developed, I would take a stack of these, 4 or 5 of them, and just put them in my file as I walked around throughout the day and pull different pictures out to talk with different residents. And sometimes they would have a despondent look in their eyes and just be staring out the window. And I would pull a picture like this out, and almost always they would reach over to take it so that they could bring it up and take a closer look. And they would sit sometimes and just stare at the picture. And sometimes just conversations would begin to pour out of them. Oh, I remember when I went to the carnival as a child, and the first time I rode a roller coaster, here's where it was and here's what it felt like. And but these are pictures of things or experiences that everyone has had some relationship to in their lives. These are just a few of our cards. And again, each one on the back has different questions, different prompts, and different interesting facts. The beauty of these cards is that every card can take you somewhere different. One might picture or lead to a childhood story, another one might lead to an opinion or something about their life that you've never heard before. Sometimes you'll start with the picture on the card, and 5 minutes later, you're talking about something completely different. And that's okay. That's actually the point. The card did its job. It started the conversation. I've spent many years working with individuals and families, and I've learned that meaningful connection doesn't always require some profound conversation. Sometimes it just begins with something very simple, a picture, and someone who's willing to listen. Memory cues can be used by a daughter sitting with her elderly parent, a professional caregiver spending time with their resident, or even a speech or occupational therapist, and also activity professionals working individually or with groups. And they're reusable. The same picture can lead to completely different conversations with different people. So if conversations with someone you care about have become harder, or you're a professional looking for an easy to use resource for creating meaningful interaction, I'd encourage you to take a look at NeuroStream's Memory Cues. Don't worry about forcing a memory. Don't worry about getting the right answer. Just give them something to talk about. You can see more details and order yours at memorycues.com. And for a limited time, Memory Cues are 25% off. Get yours today. NeuroStream Memory Cues, a better place to begin.